Depot Divide!
Depot.
Hello.
All right, kids, welcome back to Depot Devoid. I am more or less Matt Fagan, and with me here, as always,
I am less and more of Ted Fagan.
less and more.
Yes.
Man, we're already starting out with paradoxes. Things are going to get weird.
Now, I lost a little bit of myself today, and I gained more. You never can.
So you traded a foot for like two shoulders.
I mean, I lost some skin, and I gave away $12,480.18, and I'm good.
That sounds like a bad deal all around.
Not exactly.
I hope that you got something in return that was worth at least some percentage of that.
I got that money as earned income for myself, so I gained tax liability.
Axe liability?
Tax. But if there was a good axe murder in this movie, I would say that would work.
Well, we're not talking about Nature Trail to Hell today, so there's no axe murdering going on.
This wasn't even
we
in
are
3D.
going to be talking about the 1996 Wes Craven movie Scream, which is something that probably everybody in the world has already talked about before. But correct me if I'm wrong, this is your first time, Ted, having seen Scream?
I know that I've seen it once long, long ago. I might have seen it in the theater. I think I've only seen bits of the second one.
Okay. Did you have any particular memory of Scream returning to it in this last week?
My favorite part of it entirely is Matt Lillard on the phone at the end of it when he ad-libbed the line, "My parents are going to be so mad at me.
My mom and dad are going to be so mad." He's really funny in this movie.
From what I understand from the brief reading I did, he actually ad-libbed quite a bit of his bullshit. And
I absolutely believe that. And the character feels like pretty lived in, like more than you would expect for this kind of movie.
The frothing at the mouth bit too. God damn, he did a good job. I really appreciate Matthew Lillard.
He's really enjoyable. This is one of my favorite movies. This is a cozy comfort movie for me. I was actually watching Scream 4 this afternoon, and I turned to Bill, who was sort of halfway paying attention and playing Scrabble on his phone. And I was like, I told him this is the cozy sort of comfort lived in background movie that to him that he gets out of Cougar Town, where it's just like he puts it on and it's just his friends there. And that's what the Scream franchise is like for me. I feel like I'm hanging out with pals and just having a good time, and occasionally one of them gets murdered, but like we're all enjoying ourselves. And this, like, I honestly, like, I remember fiercely defending the original Scream as like an objectively good movie. And I think all of the sequels are a huge step down from that in quality and general satisfaction level of an audience member. But like at this point, I don't even know if it's a good movie anymore. I enjoy it so much that like even if it's a complete shite movie, like it doesn't change how much I enjoy watching it. And hanging out in that world where I just feel really comfy.
Fair enough. I certainly appreciated it. I suppose I can save that for, the end when I explain my overall feelings of it. But
Well, let me ask you this. Why is Scream the most important movie of all time?
because we're talking about it right now, and it was a lot of fun to watch. So talking about it's going to be really good. And also, the other day I was texting you and I told you that I'm fucking invincible, and I accidentally knocked over 100-pound sprocket onto my ankle and foot today, and I barely have any goddamn damage. It's almost perfect down there. It's just like a little bit of skin. Matt, I am fucking invincible, and that's why Scream is important. I
Well, so
cannot die.
if you decide to put on the mask and like ghost face a bunch of people, like you will probably do a better job than most of the ghost faces in this franchise because
True.
they tend to be pretty vincible.
Well, and realistically, also when you're looking at it in that kind of aspect, I can probably still pass for a teenager if some of them did.
This franchise generally has some pretty old ass teenagers. I did not look up to see how old any of them actually were at the time of filming. I'm sure most of them are at least 24. A couple of them are probably significantly older than that.
It's probably not as bad as 90210 when they had one guy who was like 38 playing a fucking
No, this is
17-year-old.
that's something that like you become pretty immune to as a fan of the horror genre, except like really striking examples one way or another, or when they have like when they cast a 30-year-old and an actual teenager side by side and you're forced to look at them in the same frame. But most of the time, like as long as they stay in that like early to mid 20s range, you just kind of overlook it because like what the fuck are you gonna do?
It's just the way it's
You can't cast
be.
actual 17-year-olds. There's rules about how long they can work.
Yes. And so more realistically, aside from the fact that I'm clearly invincible and can act in this movie as a teenager myself, this movie is actually a very well-made horror film that I am going to get a little bit more picky about more as we're talking about it.
Sure. I'll let you lead that because I took no notes. I watched it and I was going to watch it again and take notes, but instead I just started watching the rest of the franchise and never wrote anything down.
I took very few notes specifically because there is way too much going on in this movie. But we'll get to that as we go through it. Again, invincible, barely damaged by 100-pound sprocket. I'm gonna go run in the morning because it didn't fuck my ankle up. I am invincible.
That is your prerogative.
Yes.
I will probably watch Scream 5 in the morning instead of running.
You can watch it while you're running. We have smartphones these days.
No, it's all right. I'll just cozy up on the couch, cup of coffee, watch some Scream 5. I think it'll be a good way to start my day.
Good times.
You may or may not have watched this in the theater, but I know you're not like typically like a big horror buff. So I'm sure most people were aware just through its presence in pop culture of the way that Scream like affected the horror landscape. But it really like you can't overstate. I don't want to say its importance because I don't think it was important to copy Scream. But you can't overstate its effect in terms of not just overt imitators, but the way Scream affected the tone of those sort of like mid-range production horror screenplays for the next decade. Like its influence was fucking everywhere. And I don't know why that became the zeitgeist, like the touchstone with of self-aware teenagers who compare their circumstances to a horror movie. Like, why did that need to exist beyond Scream? I don't know, but it's everywhere for so many years after this.
Very much so.
But for this movie, I mean, to look at Scream as its own thing without this sort of tiresome effect of its repetition in other movies, like it was a big breath of fresh air, and it didn't need to be a franchise and it didn't need to be imitated, but as its own thing, it was really fun. It's not particularly scary.
No, it's
It's
really
what you would
comfy.
call a thrill ride. It's got a lot of like fun, thrilling sequences. It's not there, like it's never grueling to watch a Scream movie. It's essentially a comedy. It's not the comedy the way like Scary Movie is a comedy, but it is definitely aware of the fun that it's having, and those laughs are sort of there on the screen and not just in the audience. And it just I feel like that just all bleeds out into the audience experience for me anyway. And it's just like everyone seems to be having such a good time that like I can't help but have a really good time too.
It's a serious spoof.
Yeah,
It
yes,
wants to
it
keep it
is.
serious, but it does not pretend for 1 second that is not a spoof. I mean,
Yes.
even the opening scene where you've got big name actress Drew Barrymore, who hadn't been doing a lot at the time, on screen, you would assume that she must be a big part of it, not to be the first person to be killed in the first, like, well, not first person. Her boyfriend got gutted and spilled out his
But she's the first person the audience is connecting with
right
and then gets killed. And that
within
was
5 minutes.
actually, if you listen to the commentaries, that was apparently her idea. Like she was
Yes,
actually supposed to be the lead, and she said to them that wouldn't it be more interesting if you sort of trick people into thinking that I'm the lead? Because if you see it, like Nev Campbell was just the girl from Party of Five. Like that's really who she was to everybody. So you didn't think she was going to be carrying a movie, and you could easily go into this in the theater assuming that Drew Barrymore is going to be your lead, and then she dies before the credits, and it's like that scene is really good. It's not that scary, but I feel like I was commenting to Bill when we were watching it this week. Um, I feel like even if you are not interested in storytelling as an art form, I feel like you can watch that opening sequence and you can see the mechanics of a scary scene. You can appreciate, even if it's not like I so much of Scream kind of holds the audience at a bit of a distance, and I think that's why it's kind of more funny than scary, because you don't get fully immersed. And I think part of it is you can see the parts and the way that they're moving to put this scary scene together and like really appreciate it as an act of storytelling. Um, and I think like even Bill, who like generally speaking, that couldn't care less about that. I like really likes that, and it was actually really funny to me the first time I convinced him to watch Scream, which was the first slasher movie he ever saw.
Hmm.
Um, how immediately things from this movie became part of his lexicon and the dialogue he has with movies when he watches them. When a character is doing something in a movie that is frustrating, he says, "Take the popcorn off the stove." And it's because of Drew Barrymore in Scream. And that just became part of the way he relates to movies in general. Like immediately
that's
that
good.
became part of and I love that. And I think that's one of the things about Scream is that it invites people to appreciate the storytelling.
This movie is truly fantastically full of tropes and yet it creates so many more of them itself. It was really, really well done.
Yes, and that's why it ended up like being like an exhausting franchise that just goes on and on.
I bet, and that's why that again. This is why I did not really take hardly any notes. It was frustratingly full of too much information. I would have had to have spent probably 3 extra hours pausing it, being like, "God damn it, I got one more money." It's like we're just going to talk about what comes up.
Well, there's so much that's fun and so much that's right about it that like yeah, if you try to take notes, you just end up writing the screenplay down.
Exactly.
So you can talk about all the parts of it.
And we've literally only talked about like we've touched on the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And
So.
and I gotta say that that whole scene is really fun. And depending on like your mood when you start watching it, I feel like you can engage with it in a lot of different ways. And like sometimes it's just this sort of like chin scratching appreciation of the storytelling, or you know, if you could get really into it, you know, and it can be, you know, she is experiencing a really scary situation, and you know you can go with her down that road, and it's like it's pretty brutal. And I love that moment at the end of the scene, like she has been stabbed and her parents are home, and like first they almost, you know, they almost cross paths, but she can't quite say mom out loud. But then when the mom gets the phone and can hear her dying on the other end of the line, it's just a really beautifully constructed scene, and it's fun and it's scary. And Drew Barrymore does a terrific job, which you know she hasn't necessarily been given a lot of opportunities to do in recent years up to that moment. I think this was probably right after she'd done like Poison Ivy and maybe Doppelganger, which was a pretty crazy ass movie that came out in the early 90s.
I am not familiar with either of them, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Oh, there. Poison Ivy is one of those like she's playing like the teen temptress who breaks up a family, like there's like a dad and like his daughter played by Sarah Gilbert from Roseanne. And yeah, Drew Barrymore is like the naughty vixen. um pretty trashy, fun but like pretty trashy. And Doppelganger is like some demented sort of sci-fi horror thing that is like literally like has a doppelganger of Drew Barrymore. And there's some great twisted prosthetic effects at some point. Not really worth tracking down. I tried to look for it recently because it popped into my head, and it's out of print, wasn't streaming anywhere, and looked like it was going to either be expensive or a pain in the ass to find. And like it's not that interesting.
Did I ever tell you
I'm
about
not
the
going to
time
try to resurrect it if that movie is trying to die.
that's reasonable? Did I ever tell you about the time that I honestly thought about calling Ian at work at McGuire Bearing when I was working at Steelhead Brewery? Because
Mm-mm.
there was somebody sitting at the bar that looked exactly like our brother, to the point where I'm like, I'm there within 10 feet of this person being like, holy fuck. Why is Ian here in the middle of the day drinking beer? He's supposed to be at work. And I'm like,
Weird.
even walking around to the side and being like, fuck. And I'm getting like within about 6 feet of this guy being like, is that my brother? Is it? Could it be? He's supposed to be about 7 miles away at work right now, not drinking beer at my work. And ultimately, in the end, because he paid absolutely no attention to me walking by, I concluded that clearly this must not, in fact, be our brother. So I just gave up on it and talked to him about it later. I was like, dude, there's this guy, I swear. He's like, yeah, no, that wasn't me. I was like, I know it wasn't you, but it really could have been. It's intense.
The old doppelganger. Yeah, there was one that people used to see on public transit when I was in college, like who people would tell me that they saw me. I eventually saw him too, and I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I see that." If I wasn't right here, I'd be like, "Huh, is that me?"
Yeah, there was apparently one of me at Eastern Oregon University's campus when I was going to school there that a couple of my friends actually went up and tried to talk to, and then were annoyed that I did not know them and was being so rude to them. Like, leave me the fuck alone. I don't know you. And
So doppelganger Ted wasn't really nice to strangers.
well, I mean, they were talking to me. They were like, "Oh, Ted, hey, about the thing." It's like, I don't. What the fuck are you talking about? It was clearly not me based on the reaction, but apparently apparently he was a pretty good lookalike. I never saw him. Or maybe it was me all along.
Well, it could be an out of time sort of thing.
There is that.
Maybe it just hasn't happened yet. I mean,
It,
to you this time around.
maybe. I mean, there was the time that I was Steve, but that's another story. I'll
Well,
tell
that's
you.
yeah. I mean, that's a different thing altogether.
It was a good time.
So yeah, then Drew Barrymore dies.
She dies a lot and gets hung up from a tree, and then everybody's sad.
It's a pretty intense situation. It's the introduction of a new modern mid '90s slasher character, um, which I mean it works really well, and part of it is like this simple, really striking mask. I think works really well. Simple is better most of the time. I know they went through a lot of different variations trying to find this, and it was like there's a whole story about how they ended up with this mask. But it was the important thing is that it does work really well, and it works as the face of this movie, and going forward the face of a franchise. And the series, I mean, this movie specifically and the series in general always has a relationship with uh, contemporary technology. The cell phone use in this movie is like pretty cutting edge for like a lot of movies will have a tendency to either try to be too cutting edge and so then they become really badly dated even by the time that they come out, or they try to be more timeless and so they don't use technology as a plot point. And Scream just like leaned right into it, and they were like, we're taking the way that cell phones are used in this moment and we are making it part of the story in a way that is like it's indispensable. You can't like you can't do this any other way. And they've also always maintained a certain relationship with whatever is happening in the current horror movie landscape. And so here we're setting the stage for what becomes a trope for the franchise going forward. And here it's all about people have these cell phones, but not everybody has them. And it's also much harder to trace anything involving cell phones the way you could landlines, and that's really important to the story too. People are unfamiliar with the way that like cloning cell phones works. It's a whole thing that like makes the story like a little more tangible, and it feels very much of its time. I saw it in that time, so I can't really look at it from 2023 like with fresh eyes and be like, does this feel like absurdly dated and old fashioned? It probably does. It definitely feels very 90s to watch it visually, but I love the way it leaned into that and just made that a part of the story that you could not do without.
And that all makes sense. I've got two notes here for the earlier part of the film, and really honestly that's about all I got for the earlier, like the first half of the film. There's not a lot that really requires talking about because it moves through it and there's just so much meat to the whole thing. This
It's a
movie
good story.
well, and they had way too much already written. It had all the stuff with Cotton from the background. You know, you basically have all the meat for a prequel if they ever want to go that route. It's thick, and then they've got all these other sidelines going on for everybody. All the characters have everything going on, and all this garbage. I mean, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours about this one movie, but really, for the first half of the movie, all I got here is Kmart Johnny Depp is the boyfriend.
Yeah, yes.
And the fawns shouldn't have touched Sydney. It felt really creepy when the principal Henry touched Sydney.
Yeah. He's kind of an odd duck. Well, don't worry, he won't make it to the end of the movie.
And that's probably good.
But yeah, it is really interesting that Scream has so much backstory built into it, and that's something that almost no movie is willing to do. And you actually, like, it would be so easy to cut a bunch of this out and not utilize it. It would be easy for Sydney's mom's murder to just have been unsolved, but to build in this extra layer of she having fingered an innocent man who has now been in jail for a year. Well, not a whole year, because it's only been a year since the murder, but it's there's a lot of backstory that feels maybe not crucial, but lends so much to the texture of the movie. And it also, and this is, I have a real soft spot for Courtney Cox in pretty much anything, except for Friends. That's a terrible show. But I love her in this franchise. I love her in this movie, and part of what makes it work is that extra backstory makes her character a little bit grayer, because she's sort of vicious and cutthroat, and that's like really important to who she is, particularly in the first movie. But she's also right, and that's really important. And it's interesting because so much of this backstory that is just a little extra something for the first movie actually gets mined for more information and more story in the sequels. But for this one, I'm so glad that they were able to. I feel like if they hadn't gotten someone like Wes Craven, who is a really well-known and well-respected horror director, to helm this movie, studios would have insisted on cutting a lot of this out to streamline the story. And I think its salvation is that they didn't make them do that.
Yeah, I really, with this movie, it's, and again, I mean, I'm not going to be able to talk about all this stuff because there's just too much. There's not much of this movie where you could get up and walk away that you don't actually need. When you become friends with this movie, as you have, even if you hate Courtney Cox in Friends, you have become friends with the film. You can get up and walk away because you know
Courtney Cox before, before Friends. Friends was just a sad detour that she took after the Misfits of Science, which was definitely like where I met her. Her weird foray into the live action Masters of the Universe movie with Dolph Lundgren. Like, that was a weird thing. She doesn't.
We're gonna have to watch
that much in interviews.
No, we're gonna have.
It's a very special movie. It's that is a mess.
I haven't seen it since 1989 or 88. I think it was 89.
It's so bad.
I knew it was bad when I was 7.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's anytime where you try to do a fantasy thing like that, but like you clearly don't have the chops to make it, so you instead like transport your fantasy characters to contemporary Earth to
and have
save
Courtney
money.
Cox get butthurt about eating chicken.
Well, I mean, I would be if I had to eat chicken with Dolph Lundgren.
Well, I think that she was eating him with a funny dwarf and Master of Arms.
Yeah, it should have been Orko, but they couldn't even do Orko apparently, so they had a weird dwarf instead. Courtney Cox has made some maybe not the best decisions during her career. Um, she's one of those people, though, sort of like Anna Faris, where I really, really like her, and she does a great job even in stuff that is terrible. Um, and Scream, I felt, gave her a chance to shine in something that wasn't terrible. And I I really appreciate that as someone who couldn't really stand to watch Friends, and that was my only Courtney Cox option for a long time.
Oh, come on, you didn't like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective?
Was she in that?
I think so. I haven't seen it since
Ew.
I haven't seen it
I
since
know that
right after
Sean
I had
Young
knee
was in
surgery when I
that.
was 12.
Sean Young from the girl from Blade Runner. I know she was in that, and that's literally all I remember.
Yeah.
Is I remember Jim Carrey being super annoying, and I remember Sean Young playing this female character who turned out to be trans in this like really gross, unnecessary transphobic gag at
It
the
was
end of the
really,
movie.
really unacceptable. The whole
That's
movie,
all I remember about it. Like I'm
yeah,
sure that I mean, the amount that I remember could fill about 40 seconds, so I'm sure there's more to the movie than that. But
yeah.
but to me, it's just an annoying rubber face and a transphobic joke.
I was 12 years old and just had knee surgery. Well, not knee surgery, but surgery to remove a tumor up above my knee. And then I watched that movie high as fuck on all the drugs they gave me, and I watched it and thought, this is real bad. And then I watched it again when I wasn't on all the opioids that they
Ew.
had given me, and I was like, this is still really
Well,
bad.
if
And yet
Courtney
at the
Cox
same
was
time,
in
I was
that,
12, Matt. I was
bad
12. I
choice.
laughed. I laughed, and it was bad, but I was 12. You can't help but laugh. Even if you know it's
I guess
bad.
I could never get into the whole Jim Carrey thing. Really, he's done a couple of things that I actually did enjoy. I will say that, like, but generally speaking, the stuff for which Jim Carrey is well known is not stuff that I really care for.
Yeah, no, there's a
Um,
couple of things that were fun that he's done, but
if
most of it
Courtney
aren't.
Cox is in that movie, I almost want to revisit it out of a curiosity. I kind of hope she's not. So I'm not going to look that up ever.
I'm doing it right now for you.
I will say this without apology. I really like Cougar Town. It it is not a
Courtney
good show.
Cox. Courtney Cox plays Melissa
Seriously.
Robinson in the
Wow. That's
1994 comedy Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
tough. Is she in Ace Ventura 2 When Nature Calls? I definitely never saw that and don't want to. But I I was really turned off by the name Cougar Town for reasons that I shouldn't have to explain. Um, but I really like Courtney Cox, and so I didn't watch it when that show started. But one time in Chicago, I found like a used DVD of the first season, um, and I was like, "Oh, well, I guess I'll give it a try." Um, it's kind of garbage, but Courtney Cox was really funny in it, and to my great delight, they started out trying to be a show for which Cougar Town was actually an appropriate title, where she was like a woman in her 40s who was dating men in their 20s. They dropped that after like 6 episodes. They were like, "Oh no, we're not going to actually be about that. We're going to be a different show." And kept the name Cougar Town, but basically changed everything about it. And so it was fine.
Fair enough.
Still
Doesn't
not
look
good.
like she
It's
was in.
mostly about people drinking wine.
Hmm. Well, it doesn't look like she was in the second one, but you're going to have to watch
Well,
the first.
then, okay, she at least made one good decision. But okay, I love her in this movie and in the Scream franchise in general. But she's terrific in this. She it totally sells it as the improbably named Gail Weathers. Um, And I love that beautiful confrontation that she has with Sydney when Sydney punches her in the face. And it's a beautiful moment, which is revisited at least symbolically in Scream 2.
Good times. Well, I'm sure we'll learn about that here next week. So,
there could never be too much Scream.
oh, I don't know about that yet. I haven't got there. But with this one,
Well,
it was good.
This do not expect the same quality to be maintained evenly throughout the series. But for all of their problems, the first three movies do form a reasonable trilogy. And then there's a long gap after that. But the first three Scream movies come out in really rapid succession.
Within 2 years, I believe.
It's within 1 year between 1 and 2, and then I think it's like 2 years between 2 and 3. But yeah, it's like really, really fast. And there are some seams showing because of that production schedule. But overall, it's like they're a lot of fun. They're not great, but they're a lot of fun, and a lot of it has to do with these character relationships, which do become richer because they have the really strong base to build on from this movie, because they're already layered when you start.
Yeah.
Which is not something you get out of a lot of horror franchises.
No, there's a lot of richness to this, which again prevents us from talking about too much of the stuff in depth without going on for about 5 hours about this one.
Well, and as Scream has been thoroughly covered by other people as well, and I'm mostly just here to kind of talk about like why I love it. Like it's like my personal relationship with the movie. Like I'm not going to say anything about this movie that hasn't been said before. It was too influential to not have been addressed by every horror scholar there has been in the last 20 years.
Yeah. No, and it's a fun one to really. I would have to watch it a few more times to really be able to break it apart, because I mean, the movie follows an arc, but it doesn't even necessarily tell you what it's all about, because there's more to it before the movie started and after it ended. And of course, I haven't gone on to after it ended, but before the movie started, there's a hell of a lot to it, and I don't even know if we're ever going to get into that. And we've got less than a minute before this cuts us off, so it's break time.
All right, break time.
You're right back.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. I'll be right back! See, you push the laws and you end up dead. Okay, I'll see you in the kitchen with a knife.
And we're right back.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back to Welcome Back, Cotter. I don't have anything to go with that.
Nobody does.
Ooh, Mr. Cotter. Here's where the movie started to go wrong.
When they inexplicably replaced David Arquette with Horshack.
It was unacceptable.
That would be totally unacceptable. David Arquette was actually
I like it.
No, I'm sorry, but removing David Arquette from the franchise is completely unacceptable. That was like half the reason I was able to convince Bill to watch it, because David Arquette is adorable. So he was like, well, okay, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, and we got.
I basically used Cougar Town and 2 David Arquette movies as like a lure to sort of lubricate the path into the Scream franchise, and it worked. Like still, like every time, like I can put on a Scream movie and Bill will just be like, "Oh, David, he's adorable."
I
it's the only way I can get away with it.
It was great in Ravenous.
I haven't seen that in a while.
I haven't either. I think I was 17, the one and only time I've seen it. But
I remember thinking it was
fun.
pretty decent, actually, but I don't remember it all that well.
I don't.
Isn't Robert Carlyle in that?
Who's the principal in Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Is that Ben Stein? No, is that
No.
Jeffrey Jones?
I don't know. He had a lot of child pornography that he
Is
got
it the,
arrested
yeah,
for.
the dad from Beetlejuice? It's Jeffrey Jones.
Sounds right. I think that he was in that. I think. And I think that he was a cannibal.
That could be. That could be.
But I
mean,
don't
he
know.
seems like he would be a cannibal.
He looks like a cannibal. I mean, he's a child pornographer fan, so I mean, he probably likes eating people.
I think that he. I mean, if you want to split hairs, I think he's actually there's this distinction between like the child pornography and like the creepy preteen pornography. And he's in that one. Like there's a specific like slot where his grossness fits.
I'm not splitting hairs. They're all gross.
They are all gross. I just don't want our listeners to be like, ahem.
Wait, this guy's bad porn
let's not mix up our gross pornography with different gross pornography.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to split hairs on that. Fuck them all. They're all bad.
No, but yes, he's gross.
Yeah,
I don't even remember how we got here, but he's definitely gross.
Yeah, no, I don't remember either. But Ravenous, definitely want to watch that one time. David Arquette.
Yeah,
that's how we got
watch that.
So anyway,
yes, David Arquette is freaking adorable, and I was able to use that as a reason to get Bill to watch Scream. Also, it's it's a reason to rewatch Scream as many times as you want.
Here's my only problem that I really had with the whole movie. Matthew Lillard and Kmart Johnny Depp are obviously the fucking killers throughout the entire goddamn movie.
Yes.
There is no chance in hell that anybody with more than 2 brain cells would not understand that they are clearly both the killers.
But that is why it does not annoy me. Because there are, first of all, there are red herrings, so you could be like, oh, maybe this person is doing it too, or that person. Also, most people in this moment, because, okay, here's where Scream comes in, is at the end of, this is 1996, we've just had like a decade and a half that is largely defined by the slasher concept. That's sort of what most American horror was. And generally speaking, there is only one slasher in a slasher movie. And so Scream was playing on that expectation where you are seeing this questionable behavior demonstrated by characters in this movie, but you're not thinking who are the killers, you're thinking who's the killer. So you're looking at each type of weird behavior that a different person displays and trying to think, okay, which one of these people is the most likely to be the killer, or which one of these people can I eliminate because this happened or that happened. But this movie, it gives you an obviousness to the killers and then gives them, very clearly stated motivations at the end, which are plausible. And that's why my general feeling is that this movie, better than any of the sequels, plays really fair with the audience because it doesn't really contradict itself. It doesn't rely on misdirection so much. It's just sort of putting everything there on the screen. And you can figure it out. You could plausibly unravel this mystery. And that's the other thing, is that Scream is a whodunit, and that feature is actually repeated in all of the sequels, and that's something that was pretty rare for a slasher movie, especially a franchise. They generally, if they have a backstory, it's the backstory that tells you why this one person is going to be the slasher in this movie, and you are never wondering who it is. But
Yeah.
Scream is very different.
And there are some movies out there that that really have pissed me off because they don't give you any reason to wonder. You never understood why it would have been that person, and that's really boring
Right.
to me. This one, you at least you've got some understanding of what's going on. However, I've got to say, I really disrespect the way that the police operate in this goddamn town. You just turned fucking pink and purple.
I just turned purple, but I'm still moving.
Yeah, I know, but what did you do?
Nothing.
All right, well, anyway,
I
the
have
audience can't see
absolutely
that.
not touched anything. I guess the government has hacked my camera. That's what. Oh, you know what it is? Chinese spy balloon.
Chinese spy balloon, and you're vaping.
Oh yeah, well that could be it too.
Vapes
I mean,
do that.
it's. Do you think there's any significance to the fact that I'm using Chinese spy balloon brand vaping liquid?
That actually wouldn't
I
have
thought that
anything
was
to do
just
with it.
okay. 'Cause, I mean, I thought that was just like a colorful
No,
choice of name.
this is a red herring.
Just like Principal Himbry slashing around at everything with scissors that make super strong blade sounds every time they move.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a
How
little
much
fawn.
fun are they having?
Just getting too grumpy.
That was
Yeah.
clearly an extra scene that was inserted because they were like, we need another death in here.
Yeah, and
So
he'd lost his fawn's powers. Or maybe they just needed to kill a fawn. How long had it been since they'd killed a fawn?
Well, I mean, I don't think that he was really anyone to anybody at that point. Like nobody was really thinking about Henry Winkler.
No.
It was a pretty great role for him. It was a coup.
Didn't they have the Fonz's jacket? Did I not see the Fonz's jacket?
I don't know if it was it was actually the Fonz's jacket, but it was definitely placed there to make you think about that.
They did good on that. However, the police in this dumb town, everybody knows that at least one person is murdering a bunch of people and is clearly targeting Sydney. And so dumbass Dewey, police officer, drops her off at a house party knowing that somebody's out trying to kill her, and that apparently her father, who, and I do have a problem with this. I take umbrage with the fact that her dad has not been seen, heard from, or is not on the grid in any way, happens to show the fuck up there with his car. Not okay. Those are holes that are unacceptable.
Well,
holes.
he's been there the whole time.
Where?
I mean, Stu and Billy kidnapped him, and they've had him tied up in the closet at the Mocker house, I think is what you're supposed to believe. It's been
a year?
2 days, I think. No, he left that morning. He left. He's got an out of town meeting thing that he's supposed to be going to, and he takes off. There's a really brief scene where he leaves Sydney.
Yep. All right.
Sydney is supposed to be staying with Tatum, or Tatum's supposed to be staying with her. But so Dad is leaving. Yep. So they wrote him out of the movie, but then are using him as a potential red herring. But Billy and Stu have actually had him this whole time because they're planning to pin it all on him, which is another thing that will repeat itself in future movies.
Here's the honest truth. I kind of fell asleep briefly the first time I was watching the movie, and then I didn't catch that part when I fast forwarded it the second.
That is okay.
Yeah. So,
But yes, he only has like one scene right at the beginning, and then you don't see him again until the end of the movie.
gotcha. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
they're
anyway,
trying to keep as many moving parts as they can to make you think it could be anybody.
yeah.
It is true that Dewey occasionally makes questionable decisions, but he's trying to do a good job.
He dropped a girl off who someone's trying to murder and they don't know who is, but is actively trying to kill her and has murdered multiple other people off at a house full of suspects. This is an unacceptable choice.
I would say that they don't think that this is a house full of suspects.
Possible.
Clearly, they're wrong about that. But they are mostly thinking that it is not someone from her high school.
Yeah, but dropping her off at a group, why would you do that?
Because it's ostensibly safer than being alone. And like, well, she's got to go somewhere. And her family is out of town. Her dad's her only family, and he's gone, and they can't find him. And maybe he's the one who's doing this.
She just stayed the night at his house the night before, and now bringing her out to a dangerous murder farm.
Right, but the plan is she's still going to be staying there tonight. The party is supposed to break up at like 10, I think.
Either way.
Well, but Dewey is, see, I think the plan is, because it's a whole family thing, because Dewey's sister is there too.
Yes, but Dwight and his sister don't get along well, do they?
Well, no, but I don't think he dropped her off there because he wants her to get murdered.
Probably not. He also probably didn't want his sister to get murdered by the coolest kill in the movie. 100% the best one.
It's definitely the most 80s kill.
Yep.
It's very like it's sort of unnecessarily elaborate and has that the very last insert shot with like the prosthetic head sort of plopping down a little bit, like clearly sort of went back and added that. There were probably like 3 different versions of different levels of juiciness, and they had to choose one.
I love how much the garage door clearly struggled with it. And God, I love the sparks flying.
What movie's this from? I spit on your garage.
It was so good.
It's a lot of fun.
You could sell me on a whole movie just based on that one kill.
But I mean, there's a lot of strong characters in this movie that feel like pretty real. You know, obviously you only get to sketch these things out so much, but I feel like Tatum is a character that you recognize pretty well. They're all like good archetypes, but like they have more to them than just the archetypal thumbnail sketch that you get with most of these kind of movies, and what you got in probably every single imitator of this movie specifically. You also have like stronger actors playing these people. I mean, Rose McGowan is a really talented actress, and she brings something to Tatum that you probably wouldn't get from some of the people you see in the later movies.
Well, we'll get there.
I love Randy too. I miss Randy later on.
Yeah.
He'll die eventually. Not in this movie.
You got to kill them all.
But Randy is also one of those things that he is a great character who unintentionally ruined a lot of future movies by trying to make that a character type. Randy should have been unique. And Jamie Kennedy is terrific in this movie. I love Randy. And you need that character to bring in the rules, it becomes a trope that Scream really introduced, and it's whenever I see this in another movie, it makes me bristle because it feels so obvious. But Randy does a great job of being that character who tells people how this works, and it doesn't it doesn't have to be about horror movies, but in this instance, that's that's the world we're living in, is a world where the killer and the victims are aware of what makes a horror movie, and Randy's the one who's there to explain to the audience who isn't accustomed to this sort of thing, what happens in horror movies and how you survive it. And we have two parts where he does this. One in the video store, where he sort of explains in the broad strokes what's going on and how slashers work. And then in the party, when he pauses the movie during a moment in Halloween where you see the butcher knife raised up and freeze framed on the screen, and explains how you survive a horror movie by not being sexually active and not taking drugs and not drinking and not saying "I'll be right back," which is another thing that Bill immediately loved, just like everybody in 1996 immediately loved it.
And I loved, because the first time I watched it, and this time too, watching Matthew Lillard multiple times, I'll be right back. Because it was, we all knew that he was the killer.
Of course. And even now, like, anytime anyone says that in any movie or TV show, whether it's a horror situation or not, like, Bill's like, oh, he said it.
Yep. Now, and I'm gonna have to watch this movie.
In people's heads.
I have to watch this movie again, because with the costume changes, I want to look at it, because there's multiple times where you're seeing that the Stu and Kmart Johnny Depp are wearing different pants, and yet you can see.
You should say his real name, because it's
Kmart Johnny Depp.
It's Skeet.
No,
Skeet Ulrich. Like, that's hilarious.
It is, but
that's like a Marvel villain. It's like a street thug from a 1976 issue of Spider-Man.
Yeah, I honestly don't know which one carries more weight, Skeet Ulrich or Kmart Johnny Depp, or is Skeet Ulrich the Kmart Johnny Depp brand? Or do you go there and you see the Johnny Depp thing?
No, I mean,
it's
I think
here's
Kmart
Friday the
Johnny
13th.
Depp. Kmart Johnny Depp is the Skeet Ulrich brand, and certainly was in the mid-90s. That's how he made a living.
Johnny Depp's just a little too old, and he's a little too Kmart.
Well, I mean, Johnny Depp's first movie was a Wes Craven movie.
Yes, it was.
He's not that great.
Well, do you think Wes sought him out? I don't think he was involved in casting. But he definitely is a Johnny Depp. It's weird.
That was very intentional. I mean, I think that pretty much everything about this movie was intentional.
The Johnny Depp has only been like spooky in that one freaking what was that movie? It was a Stephen King. I hate Stephen King. Stephen King movie where he was a writer. Yeah, he was a writer.
Wait.
Something Window.
Like I almost
the Something Window.
Yeah, I don't think I actually saw it. I remember it existing.
He got spooky in that briefly, but the rest of the time, Johnny Depp's not spooky. This guy was like
mostly Johnny Depp is like Tim Burton's dress-up dolly.
Yes, I hated the movie that was about the barber of.
Oh no, I can't stand that. I mean, I can't stand Helena Bonham Carter either.
I have no idea what that is.
She's the girl in that movie.
Yeah, she's
Tim Burton's like wife.
Oh, the ex-wife that was in everything until she got divorced from him.
Yeah, she's the girl in Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, that was.
Sweeney Todd feels like one of those things that I should like, because it's about like an evil man and an evil woman who team up to murder people and turn them into pies. Like, it seems like something that I should enjoy.
Yeah, but if you're singing at fucking straight razors for an hour, it's bullshit.
Well, that's the thing. Like, how can they take these elements, like, and I like musicals too. Like, I don't like all musicals, but like I am totally open to enjoying a musical.
There were
Um,
6 spoken
I do
lines.
not enjoy this musical.
There were 6 spoken lines. The rest of it was all song, and it was all
Yeah,
bullshit.
that's Stephen Sondheim, who, like, I feel like everyone is feel they all, everyone seems to revere him. I'm not a fan. I it's the guy who did Into the Woods, which is like really like super beloved, and I've seen it, and it was okay. Um, I to me it's not fun, and like that's his style is not fun. Um, and I mean I prefer a Little Shop of Horrors to a Sweeney Todd. Um, I bought like a used DVD that I found at a thrift store once because it was Angela Lansbury in a production of Sweeney Todd, and I was like, maybe I'll enjoy this. I love Angela no, I could like I can get like halfway through it, and then my attention is just like on something else. It's so bland to me. Like, how do you make cannibalism so boring? Come on. Ravenous wasn't boring.
No, it was actually really fun. I'd actually want to watch that again.
I would even watch Cannibal the Musical.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed. I had a bootleg copy of that I can't find.
Is that movie difficult to find now? I haven't
No,
tried in a long time,
but Matt, would I pay for it?
oh,
That's another story. We are Native America. Yeah,
understood.
I'm not gonna pay for that movie.
I found a musical a couple of seasons ago called Anna and the Apocalypse, which
I've
is
heard of that.
it's a British movie from just a few years ago, and it's a Christmas zombie apocalypse musical that was surprisingly decent. Like, I didn't expect that, but yeah, it was pretty good.
That's fun.
That's definitely like going into my holiday season rotation.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but I do know the title.
Yeah, recommend.
Nice. Well, now I am going to bump back into this film here. Let's murder the rest of the people.
I have to go make dinner once we're done.
Oh, I probably ought to.
And I'm not a cannibal, so I have to do some cooking.
Cannibals cook too.
Not around here, they don't.
All right.
Do you have evidence to the contrary?
No, I don't.
Exactly.
I'm just gonna roll with it. I mean, you're probably right. So yeah,
The
everybody
Dale
else
Weathers
is
show.
dead. We're getting into the whole figuring out who the killers are. Not like we didn't already magically know. So they finally.
It's hard to like. I don't remember whether I like felt like I knew who was the bad guy at the first time I saw it or not. Like I can't honestly say if I knew or if I just sort of went for the ride.
I know,
but I
that
believe
I did.
it. Like I believe that they're the killer. You know, like it's not like bullshit like you get sometimes at the end of the whodunit. Like it feels right that these guys are the killers, and that their reasons are so stupid, and like, I mean, he's a good psycho. Billy's a good psycho. Stu, I feel like, is sort of in love with Billy and kind of like would do anything that Billy said.
Oh yeah.
but like Billy feels like the mastermind behind all of this.
Well, honestly,
and I think he's like committed to being a psycho.
Yeah, when Billy's explaining his reasons for everything, when he actually explains it to Sydney, I believe that there was a part where you see the look on Stu's face when he's like, "Oh, I didn't quite get that." Like he was like, "Oh, damn."
I don't think that it was anything to Stu more than just like getting to spend time with Billy and like
Playing
share
their
in
own
Billy's
horror movie.
world. It's definitely shades of Leopold and Loeb, the sort of the thrill kill, like, can we get away with this sort of thing? Um I feel like the obsession with horror movies gave shape to Billy's rampage, but that if it hadn't been horror movies, it would have been something else.
Oh yeah.
He would still have been doing something like this.
Well, no,
But go ahead.
yeah. For me, what it felt like was with Billy, he leaned into the horror film aspect of it because that's how he could get Stu into
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Because I mean, Stu's the one who's like super obsessed with that. Billy, sure, a little bit, comments on it a bit, but it's more for the sake of his friend rather than his own self. He already had the goal. Stu didn't have the goal.
Yeah. It would be really interesting to get some definitive nuance about their relationship, but it's interesting to think about either way. Like they definitely, like, they've had a long and interesting history together, and there is, like, Billy was Bill. Do you think that Billy is really that, like, is he really upset that his mom left, for example, like, or is that just a way for him to explain his actions to someone else? I don't really feel that he is even that concerned. Like, is he just a sociopath? Like, or is there an element of true revenge to what he's doing? Like, he seems really cold to me.
Frodo had a lot going on, but Sam Gamgee was going to follow him into order no matter what.
They're a good pair. They're very different from each other too. And I think that, like, there's just enough on the screen to, like, invite this kind of fun speculation. The answers don't really matter. The fact that, to me, is like, the fact that it feels right is enough for me to enjoy that scene. And it's a great scene when they are stabbing each other and Lillard is just going for it. Having a great, Redeemer. He's having a really good time. Drooling.
I don't think I can. You cut me too deep. So good.
They're so good. And I love that we get some heroics from Gale at the end too. Obviously, as a Courtney booster, I'm rooting for Gale to get a good shot or two in. And she'll keep doing that for another movie or two at least. I don't want to spoil anything. As long as you don't ever
Sounds like
look at
it
a
just
movie poster,
did.
you won't know. I feel like it would be hard to not see the posters at some point in your life and and know who's in which movie, at least for the first couple.
Well, we'll get there. I'm coming at the rest of them with fresh eyes. I might have
Look,
seen part of
the
next
fact is, you're gonna have to know that Gale survives the second movie in order to achieve the worst bangs you've ever seen in the third movie. And it takes that sort of, like, 3-movie arc of character development to be able to rock those bangs and then subsequently survive the shame of having rocked those bangs.
Fair enough. Well, we've got a little under 7 minutes left, and I'm going to introduce a question that I'm going to start asking you at unknown times in the future. But this is
Okay.
a very important question, Matt. What is this movie actually about?
Do I have to write a thesis?
You've got very little time. Top of the head. What's this movie
in
actually about?
25,000 words or less. Oh God, I didn't know they were going to have a quiz. What what is the movie about to me, or what is the movie about on the page?
Figure it out.
I think that what this movie is about, one of the things this movie, there's not a solid answer. There's not just one thing, but to me, in 1996, this movie is about telling the world that there is still life left in the slasher movie. But I think that what the movie is about, sort of story-wise, it's about, actually, no, not what it's. This is a hard question. What I learned from this movie. Let me do that. Maybe I'm rephrasing this a little too much. But what I learned from this movie is that the richness of the horror story is not just in the way you relate to the characters sympathetically, which I think is what most movies in this genre had tried since Halloween, was to just give you a final girl that you cared a little bit about, enough to worry about whether or not she was going to die. But I think that what this movie brought to the table is the richness of that backstory and those flawed characters, and it becomes about complicated relationships between two or more characters. And that's what this movie does for me, is it takes the core trio, which becomes Sydney and Dewey and Gale. That emotional core is shared in a way that it never really was in these franchises. And so this movie is about relationships, and how relationships can give you a much more interesting slasher movie than we had seen in probably 10 years. That is my long rambling answer, which is really about how I love how those three emerge through the course of this trilogy. And watching them, I mean, it's going to matter as we get into the second one, particularly, and then into the third one. But Gale's moment comes in the second one. Watching these people grow is so weirdly interesting, and not something that you get from these franchises. You have, like, Elm Street, your final girl always dies in the next one. You have Nancy in the first one, comes back in the third one and dies. You have the same thing happens with Patricia Arquette's character, comes back with a different actress between 3 and 4, then she dies. You never have these relationships that evolve over time. It's almost like, like premium cable television, where you get the chance for these characters to grow in this rich environment, which, like, is sort of antithetical to slasher movies, generally speaking. They tried that in the new Halloween trilogy, and it basically shit the bed. So they didn't learn anything from Scream.
Well, I mean, from what I've seen, and this is only from the first movie perspective, relationships is what this movie is about. Relationships of the characters who are not the killers, and also we're seeing that there are relationships of the killers.
Which is really interesting, and it's the best it's going to be in this one, I think. But there are still some interesting ones going forward.
Well, I mean, either way, I don't know yet, but definitely relationships is what I feel that this movie was about.
So I got it
It's-
right. Can
Well,
I have 10 points?
I don't know yet because this movie is obviously planning for future films, and I don't know if they ever actually
really want 10.
deal. All right, you can have 4, and I get 6 for asking the question.
Oh man, okay.
So I'm winning right now.
Oh, fuck. All right. Well, I'll try to do better at Scream 2.
Put up something on the wall so that we can add to it for next time. You're the scorekeeper, even if I'm the
Okay.
score teller.
Okay. Well, I have naked, unfinished walls in here. Let me see if I can find something to write on them with.
And your weird pink screen, I don't see. I'm just guessing.
Can you see it?
All right, I've got 6 and you've got 4. Perfect. I'm winning.
All right. All right. So I will try to do better with Scream 2.
Good.
Because I gotta win whatever this game is.
Well, I mean, we're gonna gamify this one. It's gonna happen.
Okay. All right. Well, until next time.
Well,
I love you, Ted.
I love you too, Matt. Have a great night.
And I'll be right back.
So will I.
Depot Devoid is hosted by Matt Fagan and Ted Fagan. Depot Devoid is not hosted by Ian Fagan because he died and we miss him. Find us at Depot Devoid Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all your favorite podcast platforms, or reach us at depotdevoidpodcast@gmail.com.